My name is Kayla. I graduated from college 5 years ago. I moved out and began living on my own when I started college, mainly because my father was quite eccentric. As his first child, he had hoped for a boy, and when I was born a girl, he didn't bother hiding his disappointment. He was hard on my mother and never accepted me as his daughter. Throughout my childhood, he rarely showed me any affection. I have no fond memories of him, only the recollection of his cold eyes and the harsh words he used to reject me. My mother, however, was my protector. She showered me with love and took on the role of both parents. Her support helped me endure my father's harsh treatment. 6 years later, my sister Emery was born. My father was initially disappointed again that it was a girl, but something changed and he began to adore Emery. However, his attitude towards me remained the same. The difference in how he treated us was stark. Throughout elementary, middle, and high school, my father acted as if I didn't exist, while Emery received praise for even the smallest achievements. He constantly bragged about how cute she was, like a little doll. In contrast, whenever he sighed and said, "But Kayla," it cut deep. My mother tried to comfort me, assuring me, "Kayla is different from Emery, but she's very cute too." Yet her words did little to mend my shattered confidence. Upon entering college, I made the decision to move out and live independently. While I cherished my mother, I harbored no affection for my father, who displayed no interest in me. The thought of continuing to reside under the same roof as him was unbearable. Reluctantly, he covered my college admission fee but made it clear he wouldn't assist with tuition or living expenses, reserving any available funds for Emery. Left to fend for myself, I relied on scholarships and part-time jobs to make ends meet, leaving little time for the typical joys of youth. My college days were consumed by a relentless cycle of studying and working, with scant connection to my family. Although my mother reached out sporadically, there was no communication from my father or Emery, and I didn't initiate contact either. As I embarked on the job hunt post-graduation, my primary focus was on the salary. Having to repay a portion of the scholarship I received, I understood the significance of a stable income, a lesson learned from my time working part-time. Armed with a recommendation from my senior professor and a determined attitude in interviews, I clinched a job offer from my top choice, a prestigious global consulting firm. While my mother celebrated my success as if it were her own, my father and Emery remained indifferent. Despite bracing myself for their lack of reaction, it still left me feeling isolated and hollow. Achieving the sense of fulfillment isn't as straightforward as one might think, is it? As I embarked on the job hunt post-graduation, my primary focus was on the salary. Having to repay a portion of the scholarship I received, I understood the significance of a stable income, a lesson learned from my time working part-time. Armed with a recommendation from my senior professor and a determined attitude in interviews, I clinched a job offer from my top choice, a prestigious global consulting firm. While my mother celebrated my success as if it were her own, my father and Emery remained indifferent. Despite bracing myself for their lack of reaction, it still left me feeling isolated and hollow. Achieving the sense of fulfillment isn't as straightforward as one might think, is it? Amidst my flourishing career, I received an unexpected call from my father, someone I hadn't heard from in years. His voice was curt as he delivered the news. "Your mother's had an accident. She's paralyzed on one side. You need to come home and take care of her." Shock reverberated through me at the mention of my mother's condition. I realized then that my father, unaware of my job, assumed I was idling away my days. But beyond his assumptions, my concern was solely for my mother's welfare. Reluctant to leave my career behind, yet driven by a deep-seated urge to assist my beloved mother, I knew I had to return home. I promptly applied for remote work at my company, grateful that my global employer was progressive in embracing telecommuting. With the infrastructure already in place, I decided against terminating my apartment lease, deeming it prudent to retain it despite the seeming wastefulness of paying rent. Thus, I returned to my family home, bringing only essentials. Nearly a decade had passed since I left for college. Witnessing my mother's condition firsthand was sobering. Her paralysis rendered her unable to walk unaided. Thankfully, her mental faculties remained intact, allowing her to converse normally. Yet her immobilized form bore the unmistakable signs of discomfort. I mustered the courage to confront my father regarding his prolonged silence in the months following my mother's accident and subsequent home care. His response was as cold and indifferent as ever, telling you wouldn't change her condition. I reached out now out of necessity. While I understood my limitations in aiding my mother's recovery, I couldn't fathom a father withholding such crucial information from his daughter for months after my mother's immobility. The state of the house was distressing. Chaos reigned with clothes scattered, dishes overflowing in the sink, and rooms engulfed in dust and debris. It was evident that my mother's care had been woefully overlooked, her back now marred by painful bed sores. While I held no expectations of my father, Emery, who was supposed to reside there as well, puzzled me. What had she been doing? Her response provided clarity. I can't handle household chores, so I couldn't care for Mom either. I feel relieved now that Kayla is back. Emery, indulged throughout her upbringing, had transformed into a self-absorbed individual, incapable of contributing to household tasks. I initiated the cleanup by tackling the rooms, but the extensive mess and grime accumulated over months couldn't be rectified in a day. It consumed nearly a week of diligent effort, during which I juggled caring for my mother alongside. Despite her apologies for burdening me, I tended to her needs with unwavering cheerfulness and energy, holding on to hope for her recovery. As I juggled housework and caregiving responsibilities, neither my father nor Emery lifted a finger to assist. Instead, my father would incessantly criticize, complaining about the food and my caregiving skills. He deemed it appropriate to belittle my efforts, accusing me of slacking off despite my relentless dedication. Emery, on the other hand, saw me as her personal attendant, issuing demands without hesitation. I was relegated to the role of the servant, particularly in my father's eyes, who seemed convinced of my subservient status. I was anything but a NEET. Despite primarily working from home, my days were filled with towel work, household chores, and caring for my mother. Yet in my father's eyes, my presence at home made me seem like a recluse. Despite towel work being my primary mode of work, I still had to make regular trips to the office. Upon returning home, my father would often meet me at the entrance, his accusations ringing with anger. You're nothing but a shut-in NEET, yet you're out and about. Take better care of the house. His words reverberated through the walls, followed by Emery's derisive remarks from behind him. Seriously, you're so useless, always out playing around. I felt drained. Every time I stepped out for work, I faced a barrage of insults and sarcasm from both of them. Seeking solace, I often retreated to my maintained apartment, relishing the tranquility before returning home. Maintaining this space proved to be a wise decision. However, the unreasonable demands and relentless mistreatment from my father and Emery intensified with each passing day. My father, who pushed me relentlessly, now demanded financial contributions, assuming I must have savings despite being labeled an NEET. Meanwhile, Emery, who contributed nothing to the household, shamelessly begged for pocket money, citing frivolous outings with friends. What role did I play in their eyes? Certainly not that of a daughter or a sister. The painful days persisted. On one occasion, Emery erupted in a frenzy, accusing me of misplacing her ring, completely unaware of its whereabouts and uninterested in her belongings due to our differing tastes. I denied any knowledge of it. Injured by my response, she barged into my room, and though I was slow to react, I followed her inside. To my dismay, I overheard her triumphant declaration from within. Look, here's the ring. Kayla must have stolen it. Emerging from the room, Emery pointed an accusatory finger at me, her voice laced with indignation. I knew for certain that the ring hadn't been in my possession. Emery had orchestrated a trap, a form of retaliation for refusing to provide her with pocket money. Hastening to inform my father, who had just returned home, Emery embellished the tale, painting me as a thief. Stealing from your own sister. Truly despicable, my father chastised, refusing to entertain my explanations. Emery, seizing the opportunity, added her own disdain, threatening to expel me from the household if not for my mother's care. Thus, I found myself unjustly branded as a thief. During dinner one evening, my father suddenly erupted into a rage, the cause unbeknownst to me. He launched into a tirade, hurling insults my way for my perceived incompetence in household chores and cooking, and for my failure to contribute financially. He dismissed my current work as insufficient, labeling me as nothing more than a shut-in. His anger escalated as he threatened to destroy my plaything. My heart sank as I realized he meant my computer, my indispensable tool for work. Rushing to my room, I intercepted him just as he was about to act, shielding my cherished companion from harm. All the while, Emery observed from the sidelines, a smirk playing on her lips. As my physical and emotional reserves dwindled, my mother peacefully passed away. Despite her gratitude for my care, she suffered witnessing the treatment I endured from my father and Emery. Drained of strength, my heart fractured, leaving me numb to tears. While I mourned, my father and Emery showed no sorrow, viewing her passing as a mere inconvenience. Though our lack of tears united us, our sentiments couldn't be more divergent. After a quiet funeral, my father summoned me to the living room, delivering a cold ultimatum. Your mother's gone, and you're no longer needed. Leave immediately. We have no use for a useless NEET. While I anticipated his callousness, I never imagined it would materialize. Despite my protestations of hard work, he remained resolute. Emery chimed in with her own cruelty, likening me to a parasite, echoing my father's sentiment. Dazed by the onslaught of harsh words, I agreed to renounce my mother's inheritance, realizing her love was the only solace I ever received. I don't want it. I'll renounce it and leave, I replied, preparing to depart immediately. I requested a day's reprieve to gather my belongings and wasted no time in preparations. The following day, my father's terse reminder signaled the moment of departure. Are you ready to leave? Make it quick. With resolve, I declared my departure, severing ties with both the house and its occupants. Loading my scant possessions into the taxi I had arranged, I couldn't help but notice how few belongings I truly possessed. Returning to my parents' home after 9 years felt surreal, yet this departure held finality. I knew I would never return. Despite the emptiness of my time there, I found solace in knowing I had done what I could for my mother. Returning to my maintained apartment, I initiated the transition from telework to a conventional office setup. I was grateful for the foresight of keeping that space. My routine resumed, if not intensified, as I immersed myself in work, yearning to bury the painful memories of the past. Approximately 3 months later, I found myself fielding an unexpected call from my estranged father. Despite my reluctance, I answered. His tone was accusatory from the start. What's this about a promissory note? The amount is outrageous. Are you some kind of NEET? How much do you even earn? His questions came rapid fire, leaving me scrambling for a response. I am far from an NEET, I retorted, my frustration mounting. Thanks to my unwavering commitment to my job, I've managed to secure a respectable income, one that surpasses many in my age bracket. Furthermore, I've diligently saved over the years. When I first assumed the role of caregiver for my mother, I invested in various equipment and amenities to improve her quality of life. Recognizing the financial strain on the household, I willingly contributed to our monthly expenses, easing my mother's burden. Long before my father's demands for money, I was already offering financial support. I even covered Emery's tuition fees to alleviate my mother's concerns. My mother, appreciative of my financial support, insisted on formalizing our arrangement with a promissory note. Over time, my contributions amounted to a significant sum, effectively placing my father and Emery in debt to me. While I had voluntarily relinquished my claim to inheritance, they remained liable for the loans outlined in the note. Realizing the weight of their indebtedness, my father was rendered speechless upon hearing the full explanation. He erupted in a futile attempt to renounce the inheritance, but their prior actions invalidated any such claims. Work diligently to repay your debts and cease all contact with me. I want nothing to do with you, he raged before I disconnected the call and blocked further communication. Following the events, my uncle, my mother's brother, became a source of upheaval for my father and Emery. At my mother's funeral, I reconnected with my uncle after a long hiatus and confided in him about our family situation. To everyone's surprise, the family home belonged to my uncle, with my mother as the tenant. Although inheritance granted my father and Emery the right to continue renting, my uncle chose not to renew the lease. Legally, tenants held leverage, but my father and Emery were powerless against my uncle's decision. The transgressions only exacerbated the situation, leading to their eviction. Additionally, my father, who had long been on the brink of losing his job, was finally let go. Emery, unable to afford tuition, was forced to abandon her studies despite being close to graduation. With nowhere else to turn, my father and Emery relocated to a modest apartment. The bulk of my father's retirement funds went towards settling their debt to me, leaving him with slim prospects for reemployment at his age. Emery, now a college dropout, faced uncertainty in securing meaningful employment. Thus, they found themselves on the precipice of becoming NEETs, confined to a dim and cramped space. Through my determined efforts, I managed to secure new clients and spearhead innovative projects. My dedication did not go unnoticed as I earned a promotion to become the first female division head in the company's history. While it's regrettable that it took this long for a global corporation to appoint a woman to such a position, I am committed to paving the way for future generations and fostering a more inclusive environment within the company.